It's not just about mastering technology. It's not just about brand or messaging. It's not just about making more money. It's about showing up in a big way so your people can find you. This is about bringing your most wild and authentic self into the hustle and grind. Welcome to Tactical Magic, a business strategies podcast for the warrior goddess entrepreneur. Hey everyone, welcome back to Tactical Magic. This is Molly Mandelberg, your host, and I have an amazing man on the line today. Jay Fiset is the founder and creator of JVology, and I had the pleasure of meeting Jay at a couple of different events in the past few years, but I also got to attend his event, JVology Live, this past month, and had such an amazing time just learning from him, getting to experience his magic, and also getting to meet a bunch of amazing entrepreneurs in the space that he cultivates. So I'm excited to have him on the line today, and I'm going to read you his amazing bio. He's a best-selling author, student of human nature, avid outdoorsman at 5-star hotels, speaks a fluent smartass, can see and reflect your life mission in 5 minutes flat, loves having 2 sons so he can play with their toys, still fantasizes about his wife after 25 years, loves ideas but loves results even more, can simultaneously laugh and cry for different reasons at the same time, has never been starstruck but did not get a chance to meet Martin Luther King, and there would have been teenage girls screaming if he had. Jay Fiset is dedicated to instigating a global movement of conscious creators and supporting people to organize their life and resources around their passions and gifts. Thank you so much for being here, Jay.
Molly, my pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, totally. So tell us a little bit about how you got so excited about joint venture partnerships.
Oh, goodness gracious. That is a bit of a story. In a nutshell, I was joint venture clueless not so long ago. Through a weird turn of events, I got an invitation to what I didn't realize at the time was a reasonably exclusive JV community. And I said, no, it's like, that sounds silly to me. Like, why would I go do that? A year later, I was still struggling trying to figure out digital marketing, and I got invited again, and a dear friend kicked my ass and said, you must go. And I fell into this world where people were collaborating and supporting one another and doing, by the way, 100 times better than I was doing with a tiny fraction of content or breadth or programs. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but I clearly have something to learn. So I threw myself into that process, very quickly built my own, what I would call exclusive JV community here in Canada. We were soon letting in a couple of token Americans and Australians and Germans and and those sorts of things. But that became the underpinnings of a series of incredibly successful launches we did with our program, Launch Your Mastermind 90-Day Bootcamp. And through a weird turn of events, I would like to say it was grand strategy, but it wasn't. Through a weird turn of events, people were just like, so how'd you do that? And that gave birth to this thing that became JVology, the perfect mix of people, fun, and profit. And that is my prime focus these days. We do digital programs, live events, one-on-one consulting, done-for-you programs, and we're building a software platform that uses artificial intelligence to attract and match ideal partners using our sort of proprietary Upstream, Downstream system. So in a nutshell.
Brilliant. Yes. Amazing. So for those people who are listening who may not know what the term joint venture means, can you sort of synopsize that for us?
Certainly. And truthfully, I use the phrase joint venture as a placeholder for really 3 kinds of business opportunities, one of which is just simply affiliate marketing, whereby we like a product, service, a piece of software, and we might go on their site, get a link, and maybe we write a blog, maybe we do a Facebook Live, maybe we do a webinar, and if somebody buys something, that organization sends us enough money to go buy a coffee or some such thing. Low relationship, pretty transactional, but can be a way in which we can serve our tribe and actually create a little bit of income. The next is a joint venture, which is a project where 2 or more people come together to share some product, service, experience with their tribes. And in those pieces, it usually has a beginning, a middle, and end, meaning like there's going to be a promotion period, there's going to be a sales period, there's going to be a wrap-up period. And at the end of it, we split the proceeds based upon our contributions and what we'd agreed to prior. And if we want to do it again, we say, Yahoo, let's do it again. If not, we sort of wash our hands and carry on. And then the third level for me is a strategic partnership where we do things like embedded content, where if somebody has great content that they want that would serve my tribe, then I put it in my program. An example that would be Heather Pierce Campbell, who is a brilliant lawyer. Anybody who's doing online work, particularly in the JV space, needs to have their clients and themselves protected. So we embed some of her content in ours. Thinkific embeds some of our content in theirs. IPEC coach certification embeds some of our content in their programs. So those are the three, and I just use the umbrella joint venture to be a placeholder that covers all three of them, because you always have to have a conversation and figure out, where does this fit? Where does this work? How does it serve the client before we know what we should be doing?
Exactly. Yeah. I started realizing early on, helping people with technology, helping people with email automation and sales funnels and all that, that I was recommending certain softwares over and over and over again. And it was foolish of me not to have an affiliate link for those. I'm one of thousands of people who recommend ActiveCampaign for people starting their business and starting to have an email list. But why not take some of that money if they're going to go order it anyway? And I recommended it to them. I don't recommend it because I'm an affiliate for them. I recommend it because I use it and I love it. And then it's like, why wouldn't I? I think in addition to probably many others who are listening to this, had the false assumption that joint ventures mean I'll email my list for you and you email your list for me. And we have to have the same niche almost, or niche, because you're Canadian.
Thank you.
Yeah. Because otherwise it doesn't make sense. And what I had a huge aha when I saw you last in October, we were both speaking at Michael Neely's event, Your Authority Blueprint Live, that the upstream downstream idea was like mind blowing for me. Would you touch on that? I don't want you to give away your proprietary content. But
I'm happy to. I tell everyone always, if they'll stand still and listen, because it changes how this thing works.
Yeah.
And if you think of it from this perspective, is that each of us has a problem that we solve. So if we're talking about technology and services and building a list and beginning to automate some of my follow-up, that's an incredibly important problem that you solve for entrepreneurs. But here's the thing. At this instant, while we're having this conversation, there are quite literally thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, depending on, well, the stock market had a fall today. Maybe we're going to have more entrepreneurs tomorrow. but there are literally people that either cause or diagnose or reveal the problem that you solve. So in a very real sense is that you could have an upstream partner of a lawyer who does incorporations, because that person is going into business and is going to need automation support. And the lawyer reveals / helps them cause the problem, which is the starting of the business. And they could refer people to you to get systemized right from the get-go, instead of how it usually happens, which is MailChimp and something else. And
lots of struggle, yeah.
Yes, lots of struggle, exactly. So that is upstream. So the upstream causes or reveals the problem that we solve. And when we have perfect alignment with that, which, please hear this, that does not mean same niche. Sometimes it's radically and dramatically different when we start thinking about this. But that upstream causes the problem that we solve. We solve that particular problem, knowing full well that we now are creating a fair chunk of problems, particularly having to be in the digital domain. It's like, yay! Now we can actually capture emails. It's like, now how do we get somebody to look at the page we built, right? So you cause problems in your very solution. And then we're looking for people to help us, number one, solve those problems for the clients that we know are coming. So for example, which is, I think, lovely about this conversation, is that if somebody has pages, or somebody has courses, or somebody has programs, or somebody has opt-in pages, joint ventures is a marvelous way to get more traffic to them in a way that doesn't cost a bunch of money and builds great relationships. So that's the upstream, downstream in an instant. And if you just think about it from this perspective, you're standing in front of a river, the river is flowing left to right. These folks cause the problem that you solve. These folks solve the problems that you create, and it is just one steady stream. And what we know from a couple of years of doing this, if we can get 10 of the proper upstream partners, 10 of the proper downstream partners, that adds a 0 to your profit. That's your bottom line, not your top line, a 0 to your profit. And man, I want it to be easier for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And that's why we're dedicated to this.
Yeah. And it doesn't always have to look like sending an email for
No.
each other. Like, for example, we're doing this podcast right now. Hopefully some of these people are going to go listen to it and check out JVology or check out something else. We're going to talk about it in a little while. But it can look so many different ways. I know you've run ads or done a webinar for someone you were affiliated with or doing a joint venture partner with. There's so many innovative ways to bring your audience into looking at something else beyond just email marketing and blasting your list with a bunch of stuff. And that's still a great way to contact people because you've got them on your list. They're obviously interested in hearing from you.
Yes. And, you know, some of my favorites are, frankly, and it depends, right? So if it's a lower end product and those sorts of things, great. We'll send an email. We'll do a quick Facebook Live. We can do a webinar. I can set up a table with samples at one of our live events. There's just so many ways in which we can do that. I can give my content free to be embedded in somebody else's program that sends a steady stream of well, not just prospects, but usually clients in that domain. So I think for most people, well, actually, have we got a moment for a story about this?
Sure, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I think you know our mutual friend, Ben Salzman, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ben and I were at Alina Vincent's event. We were both speaking. And at the end of the day, we were having a glass of wine. And he pulls me aside. And he's like, aren't you a little bit concerned about, you know, how all the joint venture world is falling apart? I said, pray tell, I don't see it that way. And he says, well, you know, Lisa Sasevich isn't doing big launches anymore. So-and-so isn't doing big launches anymore. And so-and-so changed their model. And Justin and Callan, who were very influential on me figuring this world out, I'll be forever grateful to Justin. They're stopping it as well. So it's like, JVs are dying. It's like, that's nothing could be further from the truth. And in fact, I was just, maybe me, I was incredibly excited that these folks were falling off. And the reason being is that they had a particular model that they labeled as joint ventures. And that model was unbelievably narrow. The product launch formula, which I love and we have done stunningly well with, is just one tiny itty bitty fraction of what joint ventures are. So for me, it was like, look, this is just the most fantastic opportunity to educate people about alternative ways of building our business, alternative ways of creating those relationships that cause us, in my mind, to collaborate better with the end user in mind. Because if it's not really going to benefit the end user, because it's easy to send an email, it's like, well, we'll go see what happens. But when we've got to think a little bit further about it, it's like, wait a second, they're going to be in our classroom. Wait a second, they're going to have a sponsor booth at an event. Wait a second, we're actually going to share space and time on a webinar or a podcast or any of those pieces. That's where we've got to start being far more creative, strategic, and relational.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen you doing that in a bunch of different ways, which is exciting. I'm curious because one of the things I loved about the invitation you made at your event a couple of weeks ago was how you help people get ready to do this kind of partnership.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk about some of the things that you sort of need set up or that you got to start thinking about in order to make it really easy and downstream to do this upstream, downstream thing?
Yeah. You know what? I literally just spent a day and a half editing a video that I thought was going to save me time from just recording it again for an hour. Yeah, that didn't work out exactly the way I thought. However, the video is awesome. And really, to me, there are, we call it the joint venture success wheel. And there's like 5 elements to it. How very sweet.
Sorry. A dog went across the screen for those of you that are listening.
I got distracted by a cute pooch. And by the way, if I didn't have my door all the way closed, Hurricane Lou would be in here sniffing and climbing up and looking at you. So back to the joint venture success wheel. There are 5 core elements that we must continuously, and this is the part about JVs that I think people sometimes miss. We must continuously evaluate, upgrade, and evolve. And we call the center of the wheel our community. And that is why the JVology community and what we do at the Global Lounge, what we do at the JVology Lives is so important, because when the community is solid, what happens is that we have an entrepreneurial safety net. And I think the primary reason why the failure rate is so high with entrepreneurship is that too many of us are trying to do it alone. And then when shit hits the fan, and it does, does that mean that this is now not PG rated? Sorry.
Oh, we swear on this show all the time.
Okay.
Don't worry.
All right. When shit hits the fan, And we don't have 10 or 15 people that we can text quickly and say, hey, something's happened. Could we do a quick webinar? Could you help me out with a mailing? Could you unless you've got 15 or 20 of those, the truth is you are, in my humble opinion, incredibly support deficient for your business, and it will bite you in the ass. Like, no ifs, no ands, no buts. So the community piece is first, and we put an inordinate amount of time, effort, and energy into the development of community and real relationships, not just transactional mailings. So that's the center. Then underneath that, we need the tech foundation. And I mean, this is your wheelhouse inside out and upside down. And you know better than I do that, I mean, we don't have to systemize everything, but we have to have some basic ways to capture clients, to follow up clients, to get clients what they want, to convert a prospect or a tire kicker into a interested person who is willing to actually invest time, effort, energy to get to know who and what you are. So that tech foundation is unbelievably important. And unfortunately in the JV space is often the quicksand that stops people from doing what I'm going to call the fun stuff. So tech foundation, and if you think of it like a wheel, and with the community as the center of the wheel, it's kind of like if you ever change a tire in a car, that's like lug nut 1. Then we go up to the lug nut number 2, and that one is list building. And this is, my opinion about this is that most people are run their business like a 9-year-old holding their breath underwater, hoping that it's going to work out, but not doing what's necessary to build the list. So we think of list building not just from email, but we think of it from email. We think of it as pixels. We think of it as messenger bots. We think about it as good old physical names and phone numbers. So we think of it from a very broad base of what are the different ways and platforms as this process is evolving. I mean, is it true that open rates are falling? Yes. That's one of the reasons why people have sort of moved away from some of the product launch formula style stuff. But let's make no mistake about it. There's still 12 million ways to reach them. SMS, text, all of those pieces. So list building becomes the next one. And we've all got to have an epic strategy for that. And we spend an inordinate amount of time on that at JVology. Now, we have our tech foundation working. We can actually collect money. We can send an email. We can collect we can collect somebody's name. We have a variety of lists which we can proactively reach, and we can also post in streams. Now we need an offer that converts. And this is well, oftentimes this is like equal parts of dark arts and science woven together. But an offer that converts. I'll just share a brief story about this. I remember when I started in this space. In fact, it was Justin Livingston and I were having a conversation, and he says to me, like, "So have you got an offer?" It's like, "Of course I got an offer. I've been in business for 26 years. We have more programs, courses, workshops than you can shake a stick at." And he says to me, "Yeah, but do you have an offer?" It's like, "Hey, dingbat, I just told you." And it was the thing that clicked in my head was that having something to sell and a link where they can buy it is not an offer. It's just something that you can sell and there's a link to buy it. To truly, genuinely create an offer that converts, you've got to understand what the problem is that it solves. What are the bundles that we need to create? What are the bonus that put them over the edge? What is the irresistible price point that says, hell yes? All of those pieces become the offer, which when I started this, I did not have a clue what that meant, like not a clue. But once you master offers that convert, then the fifth and I say final, but this always works in the cycle. You keep at it. The fifth and final component is then it is super easy to get partners. And when all of those elements come into play, we just go at them one at a time. There's some overlap, of course, and we continue to build the community and we build that circle and that cycle out so that number one is joyful. Number two, you've got tech support that's helping you. You have these people around you that are awesome, and everybody makes money, and the clients get served in a much higher level.
Yeah. It's looking at the win-win situation you try to create with your clients. They win by receiving your services and you win by receiving the financial support. It's adding another win to that. There's someone else that can play along in this game with you and everybody can win. And that person is getting more of the support because you bothered to show up and share that joint ventures thing or put your offer together so someone else can help you share that thing. It's really creating such a bigger, it's like when the tide rising tide lifts all boats, or whatever that is.
That is 100% true.
Yeah. So I love that. And then of course there's people who come up with the limiting beliefs or the concerns of, what if I don't have a big list, or what if I don't have an offer that I know converts right now, or what are all those things? I think most importantly is to recognize nobody figures this out on their own. That if you're in the place of you've got these problems to solve, hi, there's people here who can help you solve these problems. I help people with the technology, and I also help people put quizzes together and free gifts together and new offerings so that they can build their list in the first place. And I know you've partnered with people who solve all those problems, because that comes up so often for you.
Well, yes, I mean, and I think the most important part, and I'm a Saskatchewan farm kid, which is like think of it like this vast, anyway, where we build stuff with hands, like it's very physical. And if I were to tell you the single greatest mistake that I made in this space, actually there's two. One is not getting into the JV space earlier and designing a closed system with my personal development company. That just made things hard and silly. But I'll tell you, the second was believing or thinking I had to learn how to use all of the platforms and the software and how all that stuff worked. And it's like, you know what? There's brilliant people like Molly and a multitude of others that, if you consider the time, effort, and energy that it will take you. And I know that the story that I had was, well, at least this doesn't cost me any money. But the truth is, it costs you more money than you can shake a stick at. Because instead of figuring out how to set up active campaign, Molly does that in her sleep, standing on her head, and she loves that. You're out building relationships with people who will use what Molly set up. Because it's just an invitation to get stuck in the technician's spot, and it costs people not just money. At times, it costs them their business. And man, I wish I had realized the truth of that sooner.
Yeah. And would you speak to, just for a moment, the people who think that their lists are too small to actually do this? Because I know that's a big limiter.
Oh, man, I can go on a rant on this. I'll try to.
A quick rant. Do it.
Okay. So short version is bullshit. That it's like, I don't care if your list is 200 or 2,000. You work with what you've got, and you begin to develop a strategy for getting it larger. I quite literally had a snarky coaching session with a client of mine who the cycle went through from we host something called the JVology giveaway, which is this phenomenal way for people to at a very inexpensive manner get all of that stuff set up and generally get 300, 500 opt-ins depending upon what their offer is and how it fits. And so it was like they've participated in one, they wanted to participate in the other, and they were still telling the story that their list is too small. It's like, listen, you've done this 2 times. What's your list at? Well, it's at 1,400 or something like this. And what was your list at prior to doing these 2 things? Like if we take out what these 2 things have done, where are we at? And it's like, well, it was just a couple hundred. Fine. So what other methods and means are you actively engaged in on a daily basis to grow that list? Well, we did your giveaway. It's like, look, that's not enough. If you want to play in this space, we all started with a small list or no list whatsoever.
We had to start with no list for a list to exist.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So you're not alone, but you can't use that excuse, in my humble opinion, more than once. Like, I got a small list, great. Now get after it and build a damn thing. And if there isn't, and this is my humble opinion, there should be somewhere, and this goes back to we use a rating process on that JV success wheel. But the truth of the matter is that there ought to be somewhere between 4 and 12 opt-in pages, blog posts, websites, giveaways, podcasts, all of those things that are operating at all times that are continuing to feed consistently people onto your list. And if that's not in place, you can't call yourself a digital marketer. Like, you just can't. It's like them. And by the way, and it makes no sense to set up a system like Infusionsoft, ActiveCampaign, Kartra, ClickFunnels, whatever their process is. It makes no sense to set that up without a strategy to build the list. That has to be number 1.
Yeah. So building your list is going to be a main focus for everyone listening who's turned on by this idea already. And one of the things that I loved when I was poking around through the JVology course before I came to the event, because I like to study up before I show up, was the idea that even if you have a small list, and I can attest to this because my list was small not that long ago, and then I grew it like wildfire over the last 2 years, that even with a smaller list, sometimes that means they're more engaged. So even if you only have 600 people on your list or 300 people on your list, if those people, you're following up with them regularly and you have a good connection with them and they're looking for resources and you help them find them, that's still something that A, can help you become a great joint venture partner for other business owners. B, could pay you out when you support other people in their launches or their programs or whatever. And C, it's a great place to start and recognize that you've got a good connection with people, is actually playing with those lists, nurturing those lists, and still trying to get into this game of playing along with other people. We got a cough break. We'll edit it out later.
I went as fast as I could. How do I put it? That the ability to create value, and when we think of lists, this is our email list, this is our phone list, this is who's in our contacts in our phone, this is all of those pieces, relies really on one thing and one thing only. And it is the ability to contribute value on the, I'll call it the client's or the prospect's terms. That's it. And when we begin thinking of it from that perspective of how do we make a measurable difference? How do we make a meaningful contribution? How do we ease the pain of the problem that they're coping with and dealing with? As soon as we start thinking that way, it's like list building is not a problem. And if somebody's having difficulty with the list building, then I'm going to suggest that you're probably too focused on pushing your thing and not focused enough on solving their problem. Because list building is not difficult at all.
Right. Deliver. Figure out ways to deliver and let 100%. Them in. Yeah, absolutely. So something exciting coming up. You know, not all podcasts are time sensitive. This one is going to have a time sensitive element because cool. Jay, you've got something really exciting coming up shortly this April 2020. What's happening? Will you tell us about it?
Yes. Well, if any of this conversation has intrigued any of you at all, we have what's called the JVology Jumpstart Challenge, and it is 5 JV partners in 5 days. And if I must say so myself, it is phenomenal.
I'll be participating for fun.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? Someone like you, Molly, like we say 5 partners in 5 days, and people get 5 partners in 5 days. We've had people get 5 partners in 2 days. Like you'll have this knocked out of the park so easy that you'll just have a ton of fun. But really, what we do is we start with what we would call the big rock fundamentals, simple basic actions, just one simple basic action a day. You'll get a little training video. We're going to ask you to take an action step. We're going to ask you to make a post in the Facebook page, and we are going to put you in a community quite well. Usually there's, I don't know, somewhere between 700 and 1,200 people participating and playing along. And you're going to have an opportunity to truly and genuinely connect and begin to understand when we say upstream and downstream, understand when we say sharing platforms and resources, what that actually means to contribute and to create the lists that we're talking about. And if you do the actions, you will get real live partners, not maybe partners, not we should talk later. I'm talking about partners who are committed with a date on a calendar, with a Facebook Live date set, with a webinar on the calendar. Like, you will do this. And even if, my friends, even if you're sitting at the spot of it's like, I don't still know what the hell a JV is, by the end of the 5 days, you'll not only know what it is, but you'll have people, other entrepreneurs who will support you to get your message, your mission, your program, your awareness out into the world. And it's free. That's the best. By the way, it's like, and it's incredibly pricey. It's free. And one of our exactly one of our core beliefs of our community is a joint venture is a game of I'll go first. And for us, this challenge is exactly that. It is a way for us to go first. Like, look, let's give you a whole bunch of tools and resources. Let's give you a whole bunch of people to actually play with it and to see how it actually works. And then at the end of that, let's talk about, hey, so do you want to play more in the community? Awesome. We'd love to have you.
I love it. It's great. All right. So the link to find that is going to be in the show notes of this episode. You can also go to wildheartsriseup.com/JVology, which is spelled exactly how it sounds, JVology. And yeah, definitely check out what Jay is up to, because he's an amazing resource for all things joint venture. Super inspiring guy. He's lived it. He's done it the hard way, and he figured out a better way to do it. I'm thrilled to be creating so many joint venture partnerships since your event a couple weeks ago. And
have you been keeping track?
Yeah, still following up with people. I mean, the day after JVology, I don't do most calls on Mondays. I do podcast recordings on Mondays, but I spent the entire Monday after your event building out a whole product inside of Kajabi about how to train people to joint venture for me. So like, here's this offering, here's where you find the links, here's where all the swipe copy is, here's all the information that you need in order to promote this product, and here's all the other ways we could do it besides just emailing, and just got super organized and ready to go. So I'm thrilled to add this element to my business and hopefully support more people who don't have these resources and think they need to figure it all out on their own to get the support that they need, because nobody has time for that. Do your own magic trick. Let other people help you with the parts that you don't get.
100%. And I mean, and I don't want this to sound like the harbinger of doom, but here's something that if you're an entrepreneur in the digital realm today, there is a fundamental truth, which is this: the space is getting busier, there is more static, and paid leads are increasing in cost daily. We can't keep doing it the same way we were doing it and thinking it's going to be okay. Like that is not a recipe for success. If we fast forward 2, 4, 6 years, like that's going to crush people. So I really believe when things like that change, is that it's often best to go back to the basics, which is, since the beginning of time, businesses and transactions have happened face to face, heart to heart, with people that we liked and cared about.
Right.
That's what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's keep doing that. Thank you so much, Jay, for being here. Thank you so much for, choosing to walk this path and create resources for people to do this with ease. I greatly appreciate it. And I know everybody who checks it out will. Don't worry if you guys are listening to this after April 2020, that link that I gave you, wildheartsriseup.com/JVology, will give you another resource, probably the checklist from Jay about the same thing. So check it out. Make sure to follow this man on social media. You can find JVology. You can go to jvology.com. And what's your Instagram that we're trying to grow right now?
Jay Fiset. JayFiset. And I'm still basically clueless, but I'm trying.
He's getting on that platform. So why don't you go and give him a follow, Jay Fiset on Instagram, and stay tuned, because this man is up to great things. Thanks everyone for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review the show if you can, and we'll catch you next week.
Thank you, Molly. Appreciate being here.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Tactical Magic. To find out more, please visit our website, wildheartsriseup.com. Be sure to take a second and subscribe to the show, and come back next week for another edition of Tactical Magic.